to, yeah, that's a perfect timing, 10:14. We're 15 minutes in. I keep my show pretty well segmented, I think. All right, let's move right into Cryptic Corner, because I've just recently heard this term, like in the last few months. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, it's something I'm aware of. No, this is something that's come to my attention just within probably the last 9 months. I've been hearing it. The first time I heard it, just wrote it off. Like I heard it on someone doing a call-in show. I don't know. Would have been a long time ago, but and I say a long time ago, so like 8 or 9 months ago, someone talking DMT. It may have been Cafe. It may have been Ethan. But somebody just mentioned the term machine elves, and I just laughed it off. Machine elves. Okay, that's just something that one of the many things that you can hallucinate under the influence of drugs. But the term kept coming back up, and it's like, I wonder where that was coined and where it came from. So I started exploring the origins of it. It has a deep origins back to like the 60s, but that's not it's not pop culture origin, really. I mean, it could be to some extent, right? But it really came into fruition and really cemented itself in the public mind, this idea of machine elves via our favorite return to monkey, Joe Rogan, right? So Joe Rogan has his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, and Joe Rogan loves to talk about DMT. Pretty much with anybody who comes on his show who is willing to talk about DMT. So that is where it made its way into the public eye, right? That is where this idea of machine elves as a viable real thing comes from. So we're gonna watch just a little bit of that. I don't know, I might skip a little bit here, but it's about 10.5 minutes. But this isn't what I was going to do my show on. I'm not just talking about Joe Rogan, because we expect this kind of stuff from Joe Rogan, right? But we have. I was researching this, and I kid you not, this is just because I've been researching this. I don't decide on a topic usually the same week that I do the show. That way, I can do a little bit of research into it. So the research I was doing, typing in machine elves, pulling up, I got the history of it, the first person who coined the term, this Terrence McKenna guy, and all this interesting factoids. But then a couple days into my research, this new video dropped from the philosopher guy that you guys have probably heard of. I guess he thinks he's a philosopher. I don't know. What would you call Mr. Jordan or Dr. Jordan B. Peterson? Is he a philosopher? I know he's a doctor. I'm not like discouraging that or anything, but he dropped a new video on machine elves that I haven't even completely watched yet. I do love the crazy. I love listening to people personify natural phenomena. It's study in the human condition. Meaning, we have to have meaning. There has to be a reason and absolute truth. But we are gonna look at Jordan Peterson too. He has like a 12-minute video, and our boy Joe Rogan has about 11-minute videos. So let's dive in.
You want to talk about little people? Do you want to talk about the elves?
Elves?
The
like
elves.
Which ones?
The machine elves.
Oh, okay.
Because I want to talk to you about it, because I've been doing some research about this.
Research?
Yeah.
What kind of research? Taking drugs?
I would never take drugs.
See if I can't upgrade. There we go.
Drugs.
Oh.
Drugs. If someone's on drugs, they say, what's wrong with him? Is he on drugs?
Right.
Is he a drug addict? You would never want
Crazy
to do
people.
that. Only crazy people do drugs.
Yeah.
So do you think you've done more to popularize DMT than anybody else? Do you think
True. Joe Rogan has, again, a show where he talks to everybody who's willing to about DMT. People who have no no affiliation with drug culture at all. And he'll bring up DMT and just talk about it with them. You'll be surprised how many people are like, oh yeah, I've tried it. Like, I guess when you're have celebrity status, that's something you easily get your way into.
that these elves are real?
I don't know if real's the right word. The question is, we look at consciousness and we look at like an intelligent entity as being in a physical carbon.
Let me know if there's like an echo or anything on the video. When I've been doing my editing, they keep coming back since the switched to where you have to do the check the box and you have to share it tab by tab to get audio. I've been getting echo really bad. So let me know if you're hearing that on the videos. It's annoying because I have to get it to sound listenable. I have to like snip every time I play the video, and when I talk and balance the audio out, it's a pain in the butt. So let me know if you all are hearing an echo, because I can try switching the way I'm doing the audio around.
Carbon-based form that's in front of you that you can shake hands with or give a hug to.
Right.
When you experience what happens when you take dimethyltryptamine, you throw all that out the window because the environment itself is not it's not defined. It's fluid, meaning that it's changing constantly, but yet it seems far more vivid and far more real than this life right now. And there are these.
So an altered state of perception is definitely going to be more vivid to you, regardless of if it's more real, because your senses are not used to experiencing the world that way. So your senses are going to be on high alert. Everything, sense of touch, sense of taste, sense of smell, obviously visual and audio or audible interactions are going to be those are the ones everybody talks about, but your whole entire sensory system is on high alert because the world has suddenly changed. The rules have changed in your mind. The only hallucinogen I have ever experimented with was LSD, though. So that's often cited as a completely different experience from DMT, and I'm not trying to draw that correlation. But that was the experience that I had, and this was years and years ago when I was a teenager. But I can definitely say that I thought it felt more real, that the world felt more real under the influence of that particular drug.
Things that are there, and they communicate with you, and they seem to be really communicating with you, and they seem to also know all of your bullshit and be able to see right through you.
Yes.
But they don't seem to be you. They seem to be something else.
Right.
That's all we know.
Right, but I'm asking you what you think.
But that's what I think. That's all we know. There's no...
Just because they don't seem to be you doesn't mean they aren't you. I still stand firmly at the notion that these are entities that exist only within one's mind, much like the tulpa that we covered a few weeks back. These are entities only in the loosest term that you have called them up by the power of your mind. Okay, good, Tobin. Thank you. I'm glad you don't hear an echo. I was slightly worried.
You can't, like, you could say that's a well of souls. That's what happens when you die. That's the afterlife. That's a parallel dimension. These are aliens. That's how they can communicate with us. They're non-physical life forms that exist in these realms of light. We don't know. It's just...
Yeah, that's an argument. It would be an argument of incredulity from incredulity to claim that entities were independent of mind. It's much the same as like claiming that the universe was created from non-natural, naturalistic causes. It's just you shoving supernatural into a hole of I don't know. Doesn't validate it or doesn't give it any more substance or truth to it. You're just I hate to be blunt about it, but you're just making shit up and stuff, shoving it in there because of what you want to be true.
you're just guessing, right?
Well, I've been talking to people, and I've been told the theory that we are 3D beings, but they're 4D beings, so that we're 3D projections of 4D beings. So when you're breaking the veil, you are perceiving the 4D space.
I'm going to speed this up
Maybe.
just a little bit.
But that's all you could ever say. It's really just a maybe. You know, when people say, I know what that is, I am communicating with the afterlife, or I know what that is.
And we hear this in the machine elves and the DMT community in general. They talk about the fourth dimension as if the fourth dimension was something that they're discovering. The fourth dimension is temporal. The temporal dimension, it's time. It's time. It's moving forward and backwards forward or backwards temporally. That is what the fourth dimension is. They're talking fourth dimension like it's another visual dimension, another depth layer that you can experience that way. It is a depth layer that you can experience, called time.
As these are the real aliens. This is what happens when you're sleeping and people have these alien abduction experiences. What they really are having is an endogenous DMT dump, because your brain does produce DMT.
Right.
But new research is showing that it's not just the brain that produces DMT. That they used to think it was the pineal gland, but now they think literally
it does have a high concentration in the pineal gland. There is the chemical components of DMT throughout the body of a multitude of plants and animals. It's a chemical compound that's found that's useful. So it has arrangements throughout the animal kingdom, and again, plants. I haven't looked into fungus, but I do know that the chemical composition of psilocybin is very, very similar to DMT. So these chemical compounds are useful to organisms. Brains and extrasensory perception. It's whether it's chemical perception, audio perception, or tactile, visual, whatever it is. These chemical compositions are very good at generating the image inside of our brain, so that we can. Basically, your memory is generated by similar chemical compositions. That's why you don't actually watch a video of something that happened in the past. And I talked about this with Maudi. What was that, Thursday at 7? But the video's out there. Christopher Maudi. He is a psych and scent guy. He teaches classes. He has a lab. Really brilliant fellow. And and we talked a bit about sensory perception and how these chemicals in your brain are thought to, from what we understand, still a burgeoning area of science, that they are helping our brain to generate images of for our memory, like a storage area that pulls that up. You're not actually replaying what happened historically. You're using these chemical formulas to build images, to allow your brain to build images of what you can kind of remember. He used the example of like a sugar cookie, right? That you can go into your brain and pull that out anytime you want. That's when we talked about tulpas a few weeks back. It's a similar thing. It's basically like a controlled trip like this. You control that. You learn to through repetition and conditioning to control those chemicals in your brain a bit to create your tulpa and give it. And this is a legend. I don't know. I don't know where we came down on that. On that, I'm still up at the air on whether the tulpas can actually access areas of your brain that you cannot. But that's the claim, that they can. That because they're independent of all the main functions of your brain, that they can actually objectively reach in and pull out information. That was the idea about tulpas. We're going to see a similar idea with the machine elves as we move on.
The whole brain is producing it, and the liver and the lungs. So it's part of the human body. It's something that the human body makes. they've been able to isolate it in specific organs, but they think this really bizarre, super potent psychedelic compound is everywhere. And they also think it's responsible for dreaming. They think there's an amount of it that comes out while you're sleeping, while you're in heavy REM sleep. This is speculative.
Right. And if you have, and also if your body goes into a situation because what you're dreaming where you think you're going to die, it's going to kick that in too, because the DMT release in your brain, from the pineal gland, I believe, specifically in this case, when you have a near-death experience. There's a lot of research into that as well, because the people, what they experience under the chemistry in their brain when they have a near-death experience, it looks like it's the same type of chemistry in your brain when you do DMT. I'm not sure how deep that research goes either. There's a few articles out there on it, but I believe it's mostly based on case studies, which is a little different than based on actually doing the labs, because it's very hard to get a hold of someone experiencing a near-death experience right then and there and check the chemical composition of their pineal gland, because usually near-death experiences don't happen under laboratory settings. Yeah, I've never tried salvia at all. Never tried it at all.
They're trying to, but the thing is, there's parallels, right? One of the parallels to the psychedelic states and dreams is that they're very difficult to recall. They you wake up and it's the most vivid. You come out of the experience, right? It's the most vivid thing that you've ever experienced in your life, and then moments later, you're like, I don't remember what happened. It's just like a dream.
So you've never had, because everyone who takes it talks about the spirit molecule, right? How much it affects their understanding of reality, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. You've never had
spirit molecule. That's another one of these terms that I hadn't heard too much until now. Spirit molecules is basically what's allegedly being the stimulation of this whole idea is rooted there.
Lingering effects from the DMT experience cross over into meat space.
You mean tripping for no reason?
Or just seeing, the way I've been told is that, like, if you're on a highway, right, and there's all these billboards, you don't notice what those billboards are, right? Mm-hmm. But let's suppose you're in a highway in another country and you don't billboards. If you want to know, after you take, you are able to see those signs, receive them, and read them. So that things in real life that you would previously been oblivious to, you now pick up on connections that you previously couldn't.
Well, I guess you could say that anytime you have a paradigm shifting moment in your life where you could have this from a near-death experience or the loss of a loved one where you're forced to reevaluate everything and look at things through fresh eyes, that anything like that is going to force you, anything that's just so titanic.
I don't know what this has to do with machine elves. I'm bouncing forward a few.
The most reality highlighting experiences, because it makes me think about the buildings. Like, this is, I just take these fucking things for granted.
Yeah.
There's a 64-story thing in front of me, and there's these human catacombs, and people are shitting into these tubes, and they go.
This is why we laugh, Joe. Buildings are not. Anyway, yeah.
Down through the water, and there's pipes in the state of consuming and producing, and then adding to this weird techno society that we live in.
Okay, let me ask.
That's all from weed.
Okay, but let me ask you another question.
Okay.
Let's suppose I drew in a piece of paper. I drew you, and I drew me, and I drew a house, right?
Okay.
And
that, like, you know, his life, he has destiny in his life, and he has to fulfill his destiny, and they're working to fulfill his. I'm like, this is like some weird ego-driven idea of what's happening in this space. That he's like sort of he's forcing whatever that experience was to fit this mold of what he thinks of himself. And by the way, it wasn't very accomplished at the time, right? So thinks of this as like, it's, you know, delusions of grandeur,
right? Of course, yes, I know well.
Yeah. But this is, I think, a kind of what is wrong, but yet also tripping and seeing these entities and saying, oh, they're all with me, they're going to help me, they're working with me on all of my plans, and this is all my team and another life. It was very strange. So I never felt like that at all. I've felt every time I've done it, it's like, here's all your bullshit.
Oh yeah,
look at you, loser. Like it's highlighted.
No, it's never like you're so great and we're so honored to be talking to you, Joe Rogan. It's like, dude, get over yourself. No,
you ain't shit. Yeah.
But I thought that there are some people who basically become chiropractors of reality. So if he's like, you're going to help me achieve my goals and you're behind me, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
But if he's there to help them achieve their goals, that's a whole very different perspective.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So like that kind of thing where like just awesome things happen to you, not what you would want, but you're basically an agent of bringing about positivity and kindness.
Well, that's just a more of a, let's use this as an ideology to do basically self-help and things like that. That's a little different of an area than to say, oh, there's invisible beings that exist in reality, but you can't see them unless you're on DMT, that can and will help you restore balance to your life and take control of your life. And you'll have people saying, oh, the machine elves took away my depression. The machine elves took away my mental illness. And that's not a healthy way to deal with mental illness. Is it though? I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. Are they actually better if it's a placebo effect and it works? I don't know. Again, it's like what you're talking about here with chiropractors. This was a point in contention with my last marriage because we had chiropractor bills because my spouse was very adamant that chiropractics was a real thing and that it actually helped you. And I was and am still definitely under the opinion that chiropractics is BS. There's nothing to it. It's popping joints and charging a whole bunch of people. It's learning how to make these joints pop. And then charging people a whole bunch of money and telling them that when you popped it, it fixed it. Now, something's dislocated. Sure, a chiropractor can pop it back in place, but so can a doctor. So yeah. Anyway, let's wrap this up here. So I'm going to see what Jordan Peterson has to say on the subject.
Yeah. Well, I think the more you can do good things, right? The more you can be an agent of kindness and positivity, the more you're going to literally spread out the fingers and branches of love.
Right.
And if you do that, and then you do have psychedelic experiences, I would imagine if you've made a positive shift like that, your experience would be much more positive when you go into that dimension.
Right.
Yeah. Catch new episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience.
No, we're not going to advertise for you, Joe. So that was Joe Rogan, of course. We all know him. He's been covered in CrypticCorner quite a few times. I think some Bigfoot stuff, and then he did some alien implant stuff. That one just went live last Friday, so it's kind of convenient that we came full circle back to him. What are you saying, Speed? Psilocybin, close your eyes, and the phosphines become the deep tapestry, and it evolves. That's amazing. Poetic. All right. So, yeah, our next little case study, again, we mentioned this earnestly because I was just stoked to see that when I started looking into this, none other than Dr. Jordan Peterson has an opinion on it. So I'm going to rewind this here and we're going to see what he says.
Carl Jung spent years talking to entities of his imagination, documenting that in books like the Red Book. He made that a visionary practice and had illuminating conversations with specters of his own imagination. But of course, he also believed that there was a collective element to those. And so you might say that, well, to the degree, for example, that we're each inhabited by dark impulses, we might say, well, we're...
So Jungian psychology, we're going to personify aspects of our personality. That's what we're going to do here. So I think Jordan Peterson is going to get into machine elves with this guy named Dennis McKenna. I don't know if Dennis McKenna is related to Terrence McKenna, who coined the term machine elves. I imagine it's probably just a coincidence because McKenna is not a rare last name, but I am going to speed Jordan up because he talks like me, I guess. I shouldn't complain about that because I do pause and think as I talk. I don't think Jordan Peterson's stupid either. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's stupid. I think that he found himself pushed into being this hero for the anti-science movement. He's reaffirming people who don't understand things and don't want to understand them by saying, hey, it's okay. Our psychology is arranged for you to not be able to understand this stuff. It's good. And they're like, okay, my ignorance is my power or whatever. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the video. I could rag on Jordan Peterson a little bit, but
each prey to the same demonic forces. That's one way of thinking about it. And they're the same, and they're transpersonal, and they exist to some degree cross-culturally, and they span time. And so these creatures of imagination can have histories and can inhabit us in some real sense, and they can do that collectively. And then, so that complicates things tremendously. But then I would also ask, in your investigation...
So the human brain having similar responses to chemical interactions is expected. If we didn't have the same experiences, that would be the anomaly, because we are humans, so we should expect that our experiences under the influences of certain chemical compositions, whether it's LSD, DMT, or psilocybin, we would expect to have at least some bell curve of experiences that people are having, where they would be an overlap with the way that their experience played out.
Your long-term investigations of multiple ayahuasca experiences across different people.
It doesn't mean that it's an objective thing that's actually happening. That it doesn't confirm the existence of this realm with machine elves and anyway. One.
Are there any commonalities of entities that strike you as particularly significant? I know people talk about clown figures, for example, mechanical clowns in the DMT state, and
elf machines and this sort
elves.
of thing.
Yeah, exactly. The elf machines. And of course, that's complicated too, because once one person starts talking about it, that might increase the probability that other people would experience it. But have you seen
social contagion? That's another thing that I talked about with Christopher Mowdy on Thursday. If you missed that, you missed a lot. That dude is so brilliant. Christopher Mowdy, go back and watch it. I'm not going to lay it back out here, but
in commonalities of entity experience that would suggest the existence of something that is at least transpersonal, even though it might also still be subjective, whatever that means in such a context.
Yes, I have, and I think this exists in these shamanic traditions, and the ayahuasca is a particularly good example of that. And again, I have not seen anything that convinces me. I mean, I'm basically a Jungian, so I believe in the collective unconscious as this. It's a good model, this transpersonal realm of shared archetypes and all that. And then there's the individual. And I haven't seen.
And I am not a student of that. I don't think that it's actually a independent. The collective consciousness is independent. I don't think it is. I think it's genetic. It's what we pass down from our ancestors as far as epigenetic experiences, which, and I don't want to say it vindicates Lamarck, but it kind of does, because it means that the experience of the previous generations throughout their life did to some degree affect the development of the offspring. So that's epigenetics, and why we have innate drivers. Like, a good example that I always talk about is the fear of spiders and snakes, because we have a natural aversion to that, without being taught that these organisms are dangerous or can potentially be dangerous. We already know subconsciously that interacting with those types of organisms are dangerous, which gives us an aversion to things with more than 4 legs or less than 2 legs, because snakes and spiders tend to pack venom that's dangerous to us. And throughout human development and evolution, we had bad run-ins with these organisms that made us decide that they are not to be trifled with. And it's passed on genetically. Same thing as as what they're talking about here with these archetypal notions of these entities.
Anything in the reports of the psychonauts that would not fit into that model, that says, oh, well, this doesn't really fit, this is outside that model, and so that model's not valid. I haven't seen that. I think that it is. I think basically these entities, they are experienced as real, but they come from the collective unconscious. And if you look at the ayahuasca traditions, and there is an interesting book here that's very illustrative of this, which many people know about. It's the book that you're familiar with, the artist Pablo Amaringo, the visionary Peruvian artist. He and Luis Eduardo Luna wrote a book. He painted his visions, right? He remembered all his visions in perfect detail, painted these visions. And Eduardo and he.
Why'd they leave the coffin? Jordan Peterson has this huge production staff. Look at the quality of his sets and everything. He left that this guy's coffin in there. That's kind of peculiar. Whatever.
He collaborated on a book called Ayahuasca Visions, the religious iconography of a Peruvian shaman. It's still in print. The book is remarkable because it's its typical coffee table style format with full color illustrations of the visions on one page and Eduardo's descriptions in English on the facing page, dissecting the elements of the entities and everything else that you see in these visions, as narrated by Pablo. I mean, Pablo, Eduardo Luna was basically just the transcriber, but Pablo described in great detail, dissected each one of these paintings, and
Morning, Kira.
And there are about, I guess, 20 or so of these.
Well, let me clear my throat. I'm gonna leave myself in here coughing. I'm actually gonna set my coffee aside and drink some water, though. But I'm live and not edited, so that's a little bit different. I guess I do leave my coughs in my edited videos, but hey, babe, I release 3 edited videos a week. I was just talking to Robbie about that last night. Not a lot goes into them, but I'm not going to go in there and nip out all the coughs and chuffs and everything. But there's somebody on Jordan Peterson's staff who gets paid like a lot to do that. I don't get paid at all to do that. So there's a difference there. That's what I was talking about with the audio stuff too. So like when I'm watching something like this, if y'all hear echoes or anything, let me know in the side chat, because I have like several videos that I've done in the last couple of months with this weird, obnoxious echo when I play the video. I have to balance it out as a pain in the butt.
These paintings in this book. And it's basically a course in vegetalismo. It's talking about vegetalismo, this practice, which is really an amalgam of many indigenous traditions and kind of mushed together into a mestizo tradition. But he describes these entities, they all have...
Which is a mix between the European traditions brought over, the European folk traditions brought over, mixing with the native traditions to build all the native traditions from the area, not just because independently they had their own traditions, but essentially when Europeans conquered, or not even before, well before the Europeans even first met these people, they suffered from a mass pandemic that wiped out 80% of the population. So they were already wiped. And that's the weird thing, because when the Europeans first came over here, there was all these big cities and empires and massive populations. It was they interacted with them like they did when they discovered Japan or India. These were civilized, these were civilizations. And then 20, 30 years later, when they're able to come back, all these cities are gone and have been enveloped into the jungle. And the traditions of the peoples that lived in this area were kind of mushed together as they were driven further and further back into the farthest reaches of South America. But when settlers started to arrive who weren't soldiers and weren't trying to kill them, they started to interact and mingle their cultures together between these immigrants from mostly Spain and Portugal. to create the culture that he's talking about here, and it's very similar to like what the Catholic Church did with Maya, old Mayan traditions to create Santeria.
Names, they have a particular appearance, and the plants, the animals, even there are UFOs, there are all kinds of things in these visions. Pablo describes every one of them, and any ayahuasquero in training, in apprenticing under Pablo or any of these traditional ayahuasqueros, they're going to see these things. This is a cultural context. They're going to see these things, and what they see is going to be similar. So it's sort of like
Right,
Terrence's.
We're all humans with human brains. You say I think stories of little people are genetic memories of other hominids. Actually, think that they could be genetic memories of other primates for sure. I don't disagree with that at all, because out of Africa, right? Africa's loaded with primates, both hominid and other, and there were hominids great and small, so a genetic memory of those groups. Also the genetic memory of the wild man, things like that. All could be linked together, and that's what it's pulled out when you see a bear standing on its hind legs through the forest 40 yards away. Your brain pulls out that genetic memory that says, hey, our ancestors encountered two-legged humanoids that look kind of like that. So yeah, and it starts to the memory, as you rebuild your memories of that again with these same chemical compounds, it builds an image of the hominid instead of the bear on its two legs. It couldn't have been a bear now because you remember it so clearly that it was a hominid, because your brain, when it caught a glimpse of that at that distance and through those trees standing on its two legs, pulled up this thought form, this archetype of that's buried in our human genes.
Self-transforming elf machines. Terrence says that. He has a huge voice in the meme sphere. Pretty soon, everybody's seeing self-transforming elf machines. People. That's what people see.
Postmodernism is tearing our world apart. The one thing that maybe
this video, I was going to mention this too. This 12-minute video has like a 2-minute long ad right in the middle of it. Where did we? Sorry, it's only a minute long ad, but still.
Personalities, and it seems to me that it's highly probable that the way that we organize is in the form of personality. So and I certainly got a fair bit of this from thinking about Jung's work. If you're inhabited by a rage state, which I think is a good way of thinking about it, you might think, well, what form does the anger take? And the answer is, well, it has a personality. You might act like enraged people that you've seen in movies. You might act like enraged people that you've seen in your life.
And again, he's talking about personifying natural phenomena, right? And personifying your aspects of your personality. That's what he's talking about here. They aren't independent entities that are interacting with you. This isn't an outside entity that's coming in and wrecking your life. And there's not a actual entity of that is your anger. It's just if you want to personify an aspect of your personality, that's fine, but it's still all these things are in your mind. Projecting them as thought forms helps you to deal with them, and it works for you. That's great. But the notion that these entities that we experience on psychedelics are objectively real, and the fact that our brains react the same, there's overarching the overarching characteristics of how people have these experiences is proof of that. It's not. It's proof that we all have the same. That we all have human brains that are going to react to chemical compositions the same way. Hey, Jay. And waiting for this guy to relapse. We had Joe Rogan before him, so all these people talking about their machine elves.
Life. The rage has a goal, which is the crushing of the opponent, let's say, and it has perceptions and it has action patterns. It's a personality, and you could conceptualize the rage spirit as Ares, the god of war, and that would be a perfectly reasonable way of looking at it. And
why would that be reasonable, though? personifying it as Ares, god of war. Yeah, and I guess that's what. When I was a neo-pagan, that was kind of the idea about it. At least the way that I approached it was as that the gods were just thought forms that you could focus on and interact with the natural flow of the energies that those thought forms represented. But I was always in the position that I guess I've always been kind of an atheist on that, though I did have some woo-woo energy stuff tied into it that it took years to kind of cut ties with. But I digress. The idea that these things going on in your mind is fine. These are brain states that you can utilize to help you navigate the world around you, to help you deal with your emotions and process your thoughts and feelings. That's fine. But once we start telling people that there's an outside force that does this, and that outside force is telling you what's best for everybody, and you start pushing people towards that, saying, look, I've talked to the machine elves, I've interacted with the machine elves, and they say this is the proper way that the human brain should function, things like that. Once you start propagandizing what these entities have told you, that's when it becomes a problem.
It could be that all of our micro perceptions and all of our macro perceptions, for that matter, have the intrinsic form of personality. And that's partly what we encounter when we dream. And so I was thinking too, that as the gods, if the gods are aggregates of micro personalities, that might be one way of thinking about it. They're micro personalities that are aggregated within societies across time and then can be apprehended collectively to some degree. As you move towards a monotheistic vision of the world, what you're moving toward is the ultimate aggregation of all these socially modified micro personalities into one conceptual scheme. And that would parallel that hierarchy of cognition and conception that, well, we already discussed, that people like Friston.
Did he just draw a triangle because he's going to start pushing Christianity? Because that ad was for the pops in the middle of this is about Judeo-Christian values and all that crap. Yeah, this is the word. Yeah, somewhere in here. Anyway,
are working on, and so it isn't that surprising, I suppose, if you think about it that way. If the brain is a personality-producing machine, so to speak, that there are certain states that you can encounter under the influence of chemical alteration where you encounter those personalities, even those that have some degree of autonomy. I mean, rage has some degree of autonomy, and so does lust, and so does thirst, and so does hunger. They're not exactly you.
They don't. I would not say that each individual. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's literature on this. I'd be happy if someone was to drop it into my chat or in the description down below and make this case for me. But as far as I'm aware, none of the facets of my personality, my anger, lust, rage, sorrow, whatever you want to, my joy, none of those have individual autonomy. None of them, not a single one of them. They are all conglomerate towards an autonomy that is me. None of them individually has an autonomy of themselves. The other aspects of my personality always get to weigh in. Now, when I'm upset, yes, certain aspects get a bigger vote, but they don't have autonomy on the way I react.
They're forces or personalities, which is a more accurate way of thinking about it, that you can fall prey to. And so why can't that occur in a more complex manner?
Well, I think it can. I mean, this totally fits within the Jungian model. That within the collective unconscious there are these I forget the exact term that he used, but these complexes, almost like autonomous personalities. And multiple personality disorder is a recognized.
See, and he used the proper grammar there, almost like autonomous personalities. See, Peterson will just present it as this is the way it is. These are autonomous personalities. McKenna's got a more open approach to it.
And I guess in some ways, all of us have it in a certain sense, in that we have, we do have these multiple personalities, but they, like rage, lust, and so on, but they don't take over the controls. you know, most of the time they're suppressed to a certain degree, but they're always there, and they're influencing whoever it is in the cabin at the bridge that's running the thing. And in pathology, they can take over, you know, and then you've got a problem.
Well, they do with Tourette's syndrome. They do with Tourette's. They do with obsessive compulsive disorder.
Exactly.
And you can think about the relationship between these motivational states like rage.
And those are disorders, though. So even when within his own interview with the people he's talking to, he's got the goalpost like over his shoulder, like it's Jesus's cross that he's dragging. He's running back and forth with that goalpost. Because he's gone. I mean, look at how he's waffled about this. The independent, objective entities. Now he's conceding with the Dennis here that that they cannot take control of you. It's not an entity taking control of you, an autonomous entity.
Or anxiety, let's say, that are transpersonal.
Unless you want to consider mental illness as a factor, like he said, Tourette's syndrome or something like that.
In that everyone experiences. We know that with the psychedelic experience, that set is very important, and that if someone is in a negative emotional state or situation that elicits fear and, let's say, rage, and then they embark upon a psychedelic experience, that particular state can be magnified beyond belief. And so that's a good way to have a hellish experience. And so, we do have to remember, and I know, of course, you do, that the psychedelic experiences that we're talking about are ritualized so that an absolutely dreadful outcome is less probable. But you might say if it was just done randomly, it could easily be the magnification of a state of terror or a state of rage as the magnification as a state of enlightenment or bliss.
Right. So this
would separate the rest of your personalities from responsibility if you can blame it on this internal entity that lives within you that you have no control over, that takes possession of you, if you will, and causes you to act. It's like an out. It's a free out.
This is the importance of the ritual context. This is exactly
right. I agree with this too. Tourette's isn't necessary. I don't know. I don't think that the what's expressed through Tourette's is a specific aspect of your personality that's taking over. Tourette's is a neurological tick in your I believe the way that your synapses fire. But again, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that's what causes Tourette's.
Exactly that. What these traditions have grown around is the idea that there needs to be an appropriate set and setting. There needs to be an appropriate set, the most important variable, certainly. And I sometimes say in my talks, I say ayahuasca is a liquid. Ayahuasca will fill any vessel you create for it.
Ew, Daily Wire. Jordan Peterson, uncensored, now on Daily Wire. You're into that sort of thing. Now, I did have a video from Terrence McKenna pulled up here. I don't have time to watch it, mostly due to the tech issues at the beginning of the show, but it's 30 minutes long. I may pop over to Discord and watch it after Life in the Hive. I don't know if you all are interested in something like that. We can do that, but